The world is slowly emerging from the grip of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're taking tentative steps and hopeful steps into the future. We look back at a tough time that has impacted personal lives, businesses, and economies. Welcome to this episode of Focus on Financial Inclusion. I'm Jill de Villiers, and my guest is Aida Diarra, Senior Vice President and Head of Sub-Saharan Africa at Visa. Aida, let's start with a shocking statistic. Globally, there is inequitable disparity in financial access. More than 1.8 billion people, almost a quarter of the world's population, still has no access to formal financial services. And this has been further exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Visa's COVID-19 Impact Tracker gives us insight into this. Tell us about this and the findings of this tracker.
Thank you very much, Jill. And you are spot on when it comes to the number of people today who remained underserved and do not have access to financial services. And Sub-Saharan Africa is no exception to that. There is an estimation of about 260 million people today in Sub-Saharan Africa who do not have access to financial services. As we look at the pandemic and the impact it has had, certainly what we see is that it has impacted the way we work, the way we interact, the way we do business. And out of this terrible event, we saw some acceleration in terms of commerce online. The e-com volume that we've seen has certainly accelerated at a pace that is fast track what we anticipated to see over the course of 5 years to the 18 months of the pandemic we've seen. And this is driven by the fact that consumers increasingly went online as they could not have access to retail services in line with the restrictions that were implemented across different markets. They also wanted to capitalize on the contactless technology. 61% of the consumer we spoke to told us, we have increased our capability to make payments online. What we've seen from an online perspective is that half of the online volume came from the cross-border commerce, meaning the second half was more from a domestic perspective. What we also saw is that most of the commerce was happening on mobile as opposed to, for example, happening online through internet. We also, from the feedback we received from our consumer, noted an increased need for information around security as they embrace these new channels. So pandemic has impacted us negatively, but in the context of that environment, we saw new trends that are certainly contributing to accelerating payment. And what is quite interesting, Jill, is that as we speak to our consumers, and that we see some relaxation in some of the constraints that we see when it comes to gathering, face-to-face interaction, half of the consumer we speak to are telling us that they will continue to shop online. And, this is not tempered by the fact that we see increased point of sale commerce, resume. So definitely interesting trends there.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about two things, security and payment options. So if we look at security, a lot of people are very concerned about that, as you mentioned. Do you find that they are relaxing their worries about security a bit more now under COVID restrictions?
I'm suspecting you're talking about security of payment online, Jill?
Yes, indeed, I am.
And this has been, a priority for us all throughout, since we started implementing capabilities for clients to do shopping online. What is clear is that as more people go online, you have more risk to have access to increased frauds. And, this is the work that we're doing with all stakeholders of the ecosystem to first, number one, educate our consumer base. Number two, put in place tools that are second to none to ensure that, the right consumer is the one with the credentials about to make a purchase online. And that has been a focus of the entire ecosystem to ensure that as more volumes migrate to online, we evolve our capabilities and also education to consumers to just make sure that they would benefit for the latest technology for secure transactions.
You also mentioned earlier that there's a bigger shift away from the online per se and more to a mobile. So which payment options do you think people prefer?
Certainly, as we see mobile, capabilities expand across sub-Saharan Africa and beyond for that matter, more consumers are finding it more convenient to do their transactions from their mobile, and it is becoming like an increased, channel for them to do commerce. And then the technology also that we make available that allows, contactless transaction or touchless transactions from the convenience of your phone certainly helps. And, we also have now the capability to build digital credentials into mobile, wallets and into phones to enable easier commerce. So definitely phone will continue to be the channel of choice for most of our consumers moving forward.
Great. And now let's talk about the small businesses. And in Africa, a lot of small businesses are run by women. Do you find that there has been fault lines here? And what is Visa doing to boost the SMME sector and women business people especially?
Yes, Jill. Small businesses have been at the core of our focus over the pandemic, more specifically, as we, continue to take the pulse and engage with them. They've been deeply impacted by, COVID. And what we see is that among, small business entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs have been even more impacted. As we connected with them, 70+% of the women entrepreneurs came back to us and recognized that they were deeply impacted by the pandemic. And when we probed them in terms of what they thought would be so critical for them to have a more resilient business, the majority of them came back and required, digital capability. And this is very much in line with the work that we have started even prior to the pandemic, which is to make sure that we partner with the like of the World Banking Organization supporting women entrepreneurs to support their agenda to enable 1.5 million women entrepreneurs and allow them to have access to digital finances or digital tools. The other interesting capability or program that we've put in place, Jill, is to create an opportunity for women entrepreneurs to network and have access to specific skills. So we have, for example, at Visa, the Visa Everywhere initiative dedicated to women. And what it does is that it allows women entrepreneurs to, first of all, network, have access to investment, and also provide solutions for either challenges that we face in the industry or opportunities that they have identified. And the last example I will mention is the She's Next initiative that I'm particularly excited about. What it is again, an opportunity that we make available to women entrepreneurs to connect, to share experiences, but more importantly, to have access to skills and tools that will enable them to get online and digitize their offering and services. What we've seen, by the way, Jill, is that over the pandemic, those SMEs that have pivoted very quickly to getting online were the most resilient.
That's a very interesting fact. Hey, that we found it in a lot of industries as well. Is that those that have been online longer are very much more resilient. So you've mentioned several. You've mentioned the Visa Everywhere. You've mentioned Cheese Next. What else do you have to help SMEs pull themselves out of this crisis and help themselves grow into a more prosperous future?
So what I find very fundamental, I should say, is the ability that we should, prioritize to enable faster payment, easier payment, digital payments. And what we do is to make sure that we leverage the existing technology to facilitate commerce. And let me give you a few examples. So we've recently launched, the tap to phone capability in South Africa. South Africa is a start, and our plan is to roll it out throughout more markets in 2022. But what it does, for example, is it allows a phone to become a point of sale device and facilitate, again, the receipt of payments from small businesses. So that's one example of how, we contribute to facilitating payments. The other initiatives that I watch very carefully, which has resulted in some great success so far, is the Visa Connect, Business Connect initiative that we've launched in Nigeria. And this is really a turnkey tool that we make available to small businesses to facilitate their onboarding onto the digital platform and enable them to not only offer their services, but also accept payments.
This all sounds fantastic. If I can go a little bit more into a headspace area, and that is that this COVID thing has been very much a black swan event for us, and we can expect more of them coming along in the near future, no doubt. But how can women African entrepreneurs adapt and prepare themselves to succeed when things like this happen?
Jill, it goes back to, the discussion, our earlier discussion. It goes back to making sure that we capitalize on where consumers are shopping today and are doing business. And definitely online is, the easiest way that consumers have to have access to not only goods, but services. So the faster we enable, small businesses and women entrepreneurs to offer their services online, the more we are enabling them to sustain their activities and, more importantly, to continue to grow. That for me is fundamental. The second thing is about making sure that we continue to make these tools available to them. You don't offer your services online the same way you offer your services at retail, and it requires adjustments and infrastructure, technology, and we need to ensure that we make that available to not only small businesses but also women entrepreneurs who are today more impacted, by the way, by the pandemic than the rest of the small business owners.
So, Aida, despite the challenges that African women face, African women entrepreneurs especially, it sounds as if you are very positive about the way things can unfold in the future.
Oh, I am so enthusiastic, and I am a believer that we have a resilience that is second to none. When you look at, the number of women entrepreneurs that we have in the continent, it is an indication of how vibrant and how dynamic our continent is when it comes to small businesses. The pandemic has challenged us, all of us, but again has created opportunities that we need to capitalize and leverage to just make sure that we continue to expand commerce and provide more access to consumers, more access to small businesses. And again, what we've seen in the past 18 months is a confirmation of our ability to be resilient.
Fantastic. Thanks for that very positive message, Aida. And my guest today was Aida Diarra, Senior Vice President and Head of Sub-Saharan Africa at Visa. And she was speaking to us about Visa's research findings on the consumer behavior and attitudes towards payment options. Thank you so much again for watching.